Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Bree Noble, and I am so happy to be here today with Lucie Burns. We are going to be talking about, I think, some really important subjects regarding performing, especially on stage. A lot of us deal with anxiety when it comes to performing, confidence issues, doubt, and imposter syndrome, comparing ourselves to other artists. That is a big one that I notice that people experience. So, I want to get into that. But first, I want to find out more about you, Lucie. Like, give us the background. How did you get involved in music? What's been your journey up till now?
It's been a long story, and I'll try and keep it short. But I started musical instruments and playing chime bars at the age of 3. Then started classical piano at about 8. And then I suddenly realised that I can actually make songs out of these chords and notes that I'm playing through classical piano. So I started songwriting at 12. I wrote my first song at 12, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And sometimes I would write up to 3 songs a day. So I've written thousands and thousands of songs. I've honestly written loads of songs. Um, and then I ended up going to sort of a music community college when I was a bit older. And then had a child in between all of that. So, I might talk a little bit more about that and kind of balancing parenting and just life with a child and juggling it all. Um, and I just loved my music, and music for me was the thing that I always came back to. It was kind of my rock. It was, if I was going through tough times, it was there. If I was going through good times, it was there. If I needed solace, it was there. So basically I was a singer-songwriter. Then I got my own band. Then years later, I decided to start production. So I became the artist Lazy Hammock. And then I wrote 12 albums, or 11 albums, sorry, and self-produced them all. And then I decided, well, I need to be a DJ as well, really, if I'm a producer. So I learned how to DJ as well. But all this time, I was actually a coach. I was a music tutor. But at the same time, I was doing my music as well. So alongside it, I was performing, I was looking after my child, and I was working as well. And that was, the whole time. And since then, I've gone on to become a performance psychology coach because I knew that that wasn't being addressed. I've been performing for over 30 years now. And the one thing that wasn't being addressed was, well, once you're on stage, actually, or getting on stage, how do you prepare for that? And I tried to do that thing of bridging the gap of actually helping artists rather than an artist being there and thinking, oh, I've got to go on stage now and I'm really panicked. I was okay in the rehearsal, but now I'm on stage and I'm really panicked. It was okay. Well, how do we get you from rehearsal to stage with confidence and feeling good about yourself and being able to connect with your audience? And I was absolutely fascinated by this subject because obviously being an artist myself, when I started performing, I'd sit there shaking in front of the piano. And I was like, what is this thing? What is it that happens to people once they get on stage? And I ended up teaching at a college for 10 years, being head of performance. And then I went on to teach vocals for about 8 years, but at the same time, I was always doing private teaching in performance as well. And then, I'm freelance now and I have a company called Stage Ready Artists. And this is where I work with a lot of artists, getting them prepared for stage, getting them ready to feel good in themselves so they can perform authentically and also use their vulnerability to perform, not be afraid of all those things that usually hold an artist back. So I've sort of gone off a little bit, but that's kind of me in a nutshell, a sort of nutshell.
Well, all of us musicians, we have a million income streams,
Don't we?
right? So that
Yeah.
makes total sense. I definitely want to go back to the early years when you were balancing all this stuff. You had a
Sure.
child because I had the same thing. Like when I
Mm.
first started touring, I would bring my daughter with me, and that was something that a lot of people, when I talked about that, they're like, "How do you do that?" And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always thought once I had a kid, I couldn't do it anymore. How did
Yeah.
you balance all of that with having a child and also like clearly the multiple income streams or things that you were doing?
It was really tough. I'm not going to lie. It was incredibly tough. And I've written a whole section in the book about it, actually, parenting and balancing your career with it. Sorry, my book that I've got. Um, and what I did was there were things that I couldn't do. It wasn't like now where you can get online and you can perform and you can get your stuff out there. There wasn't internet then, you know. And
Mhm.
so it was like you either went out and performed or you didn't. And being a single parent, it wasn't a matter of saying to someone, "Oh, could you just look after my child?" It wasn't a matter of having money there to get a babysitter. Um, and so I struggled a lot with that. But the thing is what I did was I used what I could, which was basically when I put my son to sleep at night after, we had the day and we did his homework and everything like that, I would use the evening as my creative time. That was my time when I would songwrite. That was my time when I would immerse myself in music, in my world. And it was a beautiful time because I literally had hours. And sometimes I wouldn't get much sleep, but it was a really special time because I think there's that choice, isn't there, as an artist? Do you use your time wisely and prioritize what's important for you? Or do you just let it go thinking there's never going to be a chance for me, so I'm just not going to bother? Which I totally understand some people do because, it's hard. Um, but what I did was I used that time to write. I also did gig, but not loads. I gigged either sometimes he would come on the stage if it was in the daytime. Sometimes he would come on stage with me. He was really good because we used to do music together. He's brilliant lyricist now and everything, but he used to get on stage with me and perform. Um, and I think it just depended. Certain times he'd come on stage with me. There were other times when he'd sit at the back of the stage watching.
Mm.
Um, and then there were other times where I had to turn down gigs, and I had to make that choice. And I always say to artists, you really got to think long term. When you look back in 20 years' time, when you look back, what are the choices you wish you would have made? Because for me, I did turn down a lot of gigs, but now I look back, I am actually glad I made those choices because that time I had with my son was very precious and it goes very quickly. Even though I know when you're in it, it really seems like it just goes on and on and on. And, it can get really stressful at times, but it really does. Looking back now, it goes really, really quickly. And so it's about balancing. It's about thinking what what is best in this moment for all of us, or for both of us, or for whoever's in your family. What is best? And then also, what is best long term? I did gigs sometimes where I'd go to a gig, it would cost me money to get there, I wouldn't get paid, and it would cost me money to get back and to eat. And I'd come back worse off than when I went, before I went. And I think that isn't a good decision when you've got a child. That wasn't a good decision for me. So I only did that a couple of times. And then I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. So I think it just depends on the circumstance, but I just encourage people to do what you can do, and that's enough. That's okay, because you will have a chance or more chances when they're older. Um, some opportunities you will miss, and there's this saying that I say in my book, which that um, everything that glitters isn't gold. We all know that saying, but my ending is sometimes it's tin foil and sometimes it is. And it's just not as shiny always as it seems. Um, so yeah, so that's really how I kind of managed that.
No, I agree with that. And I think in parenting, especially when the kids are little, you feel like it's going to be like this forever and I'm never going to have a chance.
Yeah.
But you also don't realize that you actually have more opportunity when they're little. You can drag them along with you when they get older.
Yeah.
For me,
Yeah.
I ended up having to pull back when they were more in like those elementary years because they had
Sure.
so many things going on and I couldn't just drag them with me anymore.
No.
So I think we have to realize there are seasons as a parent. But I love what you said about looking back, trying to put yourself in the future and looking back, because there is that balancing. It's like, okay, well, I don't want to miss this time with my child, but also I don't want to miss this time building, my music career, or because it is hard to like come back if you just give it up. It's hard to then come back 20 years later. I have a lot of people that I work with that do that, and
Me
it can
too.
be
Me
done, but it's
too.
hard. And you don't, that's even where the confidence comes in, right? Like you haven't been
Absolutely.
performing for 20 years and then you want to go
Yeah.
back to it. That's hard.
And also, why should we give it up? You
Right.
know, that it's not an either or. It's a balancing act like everything is in life. And what we tend to do,
Mhm.
and I have this kind of analogy, is especially women, I find, is we often treat ourselves like we're a garment in the sort of the washing bin. It's like we just kind of end up at the bottom of the washing bin that never kind of gets washed, and we keep getting at the bottom. We'll just do what's on top. And it's like, take yourself out of the bottom of that washing bin, put yourself on top, and actually see yourself as worthy. Honor yourself, honor your calling, honor your music. That's a part of you. The problem is if we let that go, what do we have? Yes, we have our family, which is so important. Yes, we have our friends. Yes, we have our life, all of those things which are all important. But that essence that we have inside, that unique essence that we all have inside of us, we shouldn't let that go. Even if you can only check in once a week,
Mm.
check in. Even if it's, I always say to people, you know, um, have a little bit of a time, like schedule some creative time in. If you put it in a diary, I heard this somewhere. If you put it in a diary and just write meeting, but actually you're just meeting you. If someone says to you, "What are you doing on Thursday?" "Well, I'm having a meeting." No one asks you what it is. They take it very seriously. She's
Mm.
having a meeting. Okay, she's having a meeting. We'll leave her alone, right? You are having a meeting, but you're having a meeting with you. And you take that time every Thursday at 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock to 6, whatever time it is, even if it's half an hour, that time is your creative time. And it's very, very important for you because we need to treat ourselves as well as we treat the people around us and in our lives. We can't treat ourselves less than that because if we treat ourselves less than that, we will feel less than that. And that's when a lot of the problems start arising.
Mm. I love all of that. I always talk about how I tried to give up music when I had my first daughter, and I lasted 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that was like that's a very intense first 6 weeks of a child's life too. So like,
absolutely.
you kind of do have to give it up a little bit. But I had convinced myself, well, this is what I do now. I'm not a musician anymore, and it didn't last, right? Because
Mm,
I realized there would be a piece of me missing. And I think most people that are listening to this or watching this are here because they feel the same. So I think
yeah.
sometimes we need that validation of like, no, this piece of me is important, and I can't give everything I need to my family if this piece is missing. Although there'll be this growing resentment, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Ugh, and you don't want that. I want to, as we move into talking about performing, I wanted to pull something out of what you said because
Sure.
I was kind of the same thing too with when I was back when I was a mom and all that stuff, and there wasn't the internet. So like the internet was very little and we couldn't do like video or anything like that.
No.
So I was doing like recording and putting on the internet, but no performing. And I think there's a problem nowadays where people feel like, oh, well, I can just be an online performer only.
Mm,
And
mm,
you can, but I think you're missing out on so much because you jump the line so much faster between a listener and a fan when you're in front of somebody in person, when you meet people in person.
yeah.
And so I think that it's actually good when we didn't have that option because we had to get out there and perform, even if we could do fewer gigs and we had to really be focused, at least we were doing something that was like high leverage. Whereas I think now people are just like, oh, I'll just do live streaming, I'll just perform online.
Mm,
And you can, but I think it's going to take a lot more to build that relationship than actually getting out there and performing in
yeah.
person.
But also learning the skill of performance
Hmm.
because it's different online. It's like, yes, there are certain things that are very similar. But being able to actually connect with an audience is very different to connecting with a camera. And although you have to give of the same, Standing in front of a group of 10, 20, 100, or 1,000 people is very different. And I think they are all skills that we need. So being able to be in front of the camera is a skill that we need, but also being able to be in front of an audience is a skill that we need. There's so many different performing that I think that to be a well-rounded performer, yes, I agree with you. We need to get out there and we need to do the work if we can. You know, for some people it might not be possible, and that's fair enough. But if you can get out there, do it. And I think also sometimes fear, performance anxiety, self-doubt, all of that holds us back from doing that as well. And we can start making excuses sometimes, which we start justifying, and saying, well, actually, you know, it's not really an excuse. It's a reason. And yes, it's a reason, but we know within ourselves if it is actually a reason or if it's an excuse. And so I think, yeah, well, to be a well-rounded performer, professional performer, if you want to be professional, or if not professional, but you want to actually go out there and get out there, it's the most incredible feeling when you can get from go from being a performer who has all those nerves, has that anxiety, has that self-doubt, to being able to look your audience in the eye and be able to welcome them into your heart, literally, by being open and receptive and giving. And what you get back from your audience is something that cannot be explained to someone who will just sing to a camera. There's something very special, very tangible that you receive as a performer. But to receive that, you need to be able to give.
Yes, absolutely. I
Sorry.
totally agree with that. So if I think I have, a lot of younger people come to me and they're like, well, is it like should if I really got over this performance anxiety, would I not be nervous at all when I walked onto stage? And I tend to say no, you should always be a little bit nervous, otherwise you're not taking it seriously. But
Yep.
I do have to say that like recently over the past 3 years, I became a worship leader at a church, and the regularity of getting up there every Sunday and performing, it does make it such that you can literally just walk up there and not even be nervous. So I'm
Yep.
curious about your opinion. It's a little different when you're leading versus being, the main person that people are watching. But like, I'm really thankful for that, that I feel that comfortable. But on the other hand, like, what is your feeling about that? Should there be that little bit of, pit in the stomach kind of thing when you walk up there, even if you're really not nervous?
It's about understanding what nerves are, and it's about making friends with those nerves, but not letting them interfere with your job and you not interfering with their job. What it is excuse me, is back in the day, our ancestors, when we went into an unfamiliar scenario or environment, inside of us, we would go alarm, alarm, alarm would go off, bell, bell, bell. There's a lion, quick, run. Now, this still happens to us when we get on stage, unfamiliar environment. We feel worried. Our hands sweat. They used to sweat so we could climb trees, but they sweat now. You know, that's what our body's doing. We get that nervous energy. And we need to understand that it's not a lion, it's an audience, or you're going in to see your boss, or you're doing something, these aren't lions, but they're unfamiliar environments. So our body reacts the same. Now, I know that my body reacts like that, so I let it get on with that, but it doesn't stop me from going up there and being confident within myself and knowing that I can do what I can do. Now, of course, there's something to be said with the more times you perform, the more confident and comfortable you're going to be getting on stage. I mean, that just goes without saying. If you perform 5 nights a week, on the sixth night, you'll probably just get up there and not worry about it. But you know what? Sometimes those nerves just come out of nowhere. You're like, oh, where did this come from? Oh, I'm not usually nervous. But then you have to have a little word with yourself. And you say, okay, that's the nerves doing their job. Let them get on with it. I'm going to go and do my job now, and that's okay. So yes, it's fine to have nerves. It shows that you're doing something, and often you get them when you're doing something that means a lot to you. that means so much. And we get mixed up and we think, this doesn't feel comfortable. Right, I'm going to run away from it. No, face it. Own it. And then what will happen is you will gain more confidence because once you face it and overcome it, then you will go, oh, I know I can do that. I can go into unfamiliar gig scenarios and feel okay, but I just need to do it. If we keep running too much, we're telling our subconscious that when there's something that we feel a little uncomfortable with, we run from it.
Mm.
Now, that's good if it's someone following you in an alley. That's totally what it's there for, but not if there's a crowd waiting for you out there, waiting for you to step on stage and perform. So we just have to tell ourselves and kind of look at our minds or speak to ourselves and just say, this environment is okay for me. I am okay to go in this environment. I am safe to go into this environment, and my nerves are doing their job. So off I go. So,
Mm.
yeah.
I think that's comforting to know that that's totally normal and it's
Mm,
like a base instinct. Is there any way to get that out of the way before you actually step on stage? Like, is there like a
absolutely.
5 minutes before that you can do some kind of an exercise so you get it done?
Um, the thing is, now this is what I base my book around. Well, a lot of it around is around the mindset and well-being of performers. Is that preparing for a performance doesn't happen 5 minutes before.
Mm.
Now, and if we look at it like this, if you're preparing your music, say for a gig, do you prepare your music 5 minutes before and go, right, let's just quickly go and do a quick rehearsal and then just jump on stage and I haven't, rehearsed for 6 months? We'd never do that. Practice and practice and practice and rehearse, rehearse, rehearse and rehearse. And the thing is, we think if we practice more and more and more, our nerves are going to get less, or our performance anxiety is going to get less. And actually, it doesn't. It does to a point, but once you're past that point, it makes no difference the amount of times you keep rehearsing. Once you're past a point, once you know the songs inside out, you know the music, you know the lyrics, you know it, you know when you know it. Past that point, rehearsing is not going to make a lot of difference. What's going to make the difference is your mindset. I believe I've coached thousands of artists literally in the last 30 years, and I believe that 80% of your performance is down to mindset, whether you're going to have a successful performance or not. And that's aside from how good you are at playing your instrument or singing or whatever. Because it's if you go into something in the wrong mindset, it doesn't matter how good you are, you can, it can go somewhere where you really don't want it to go. Because if your mind is telling you, I'm no good. This is going to be rubbish. I'm going to forget my lyrics. I don't know. I know I'm going to forget my solo, my guitar solo. Everyone's going to be looking at me. I'm going to be really nervous. If you're telling yourself that over and over, there's going to be no surprise that that's how you're going to feel on
Mm.
stage. So what I say to you is I actually start preparing my mindset for a gig because I'm a performer as well. I start preparing my mindset. If it's a big one, like an album launch or something, up to 3 months in advance of a gig, I start preparing my mindset before I start rehearsing my music. I'll tell you why, because if I'm going in with my band, I know that if I'm the leader, I need to feel good about what I'm doing, what we're aiming for, and I need to take that energy in with my band. And I need to, they all feel confident and comfortable anyway, but I know that if I'm leading them, I need to be in that space. So some of the things that I would suggest, some things are visualization. And the reason I say visualization is because a lot of people go, oh, I don't want to do that, that stuff, or I don't want to do that. And it's like, all that visualization stuff and affirmations and all of that. It's like, oh, it's boring. Oh, it's hippie stuff or whatever. Well, actually, we visualize all the time. We affirm things all the time. But the problem is sometimes what we're visualizing or affirming is the negative stuff. And so we'll be, you are affirming when you say, "Oh, I'm so nervous. It's going to be rubbish. No one's going to like me." That is an affirmation, but it's a negative affirmation. And what we want is we want to turn that round, and we want to do. If you lie in bed at night, and you picture the scenario you want for your gig or your performance, and just before you're going to sleep, what happens is it that starts to embed in your subconscious, and you start thinking about, this is how I want my performance to go. It's going to be great. I I love the way the audience are looking at me. I can see everyone in the audience. I'm really enjoying this performance. I feel good on stage. I know that I can get through this gig. This is a great gig. I look forward to it. Okay, so if you start saying those things to yourself, there's no doubt that you will feel better about performing. And your subconscious doesn't know the difference between fantasy and reality. So if you're telling yourself that you're not going to be any good, your subconscious starts believing that you're not going to be any good. If you start telling your subconscious that you are going to be, it starts believing that you are. Now, what happens is if you keep picturing your scenario of how you want it to go, when you get to your gig won't be such an unfamiliar environment, because when you get there, you have rehearsed this, mentally rehearsed this in your mind over and over and over. Now, I don't teach anyone to do anything that I haven't done and I don't do myself. But I also don't say, just listen to me. I say, try things, don't just listen to me and take my word for it. Go and try something. But this is what I do. And it works. I've been the nervous performer. I've been the performer that worries about what people are going to think, worries how I'm going to look. I now can go on stage looking forward to it because I just want to connect with my audience and create just a wonderful energy in the room between us all. We have to remember that as performers, it's not about us. It's about our audience. It's about us in rehearsals, but on stage, it's about our audience. For the audience, it's about us. But for us, it's about them. And we forget this. We think that it's about us. Me, artist ego. Me. It's all about me. It's all about me. I'm really worried. The audience have to look after me. Why do the audience have to look after you? You look after your audience. We have everything round the wrong way. You look after your audience. We want them to hold us in their arms and not drop us. No, we should hold our audience in our arms and not drop them. Yeah. So I try and turn everything around, treating the audience like guests in your home. So thinking about, how do I treat a guest? Say I've got friends coming round and they knock on the door. When I open the door, do I look at the floor? Do I look in the sky? Do I look behind them? No, I look in their eyes. I smile. I greet them. I open my arms. I give them a hug. I welcome them in. When they get in, what do I do then? Maybe offer them a drink. All of these things, we have to remember that that's our home. But when we're on stage, that's our stage home. That's our environment we need to be comfortable with. When we're on our stage home, this is the environment we're inviting our audience into with open arms. So picturing how you want your performance to go is really, really important. Also, being kind to yourself. We so many people are just so unkind to themselves, and kindness is something that we just need more of in this world, just full stop, whether that's how you treat other people or how you treat yourself. And if once we start being kind to ourselves and honoring ourselves as who we are, people, women, musicians, honoring ourselves, honoring our craft, then we can take that craft and we can give that to others with love, from our hearts, rather than this exchange, this really uncomfortable exchange of nerves and anxiety. And we're getting on stage and it's all so difficult and it's all so hard. And it's like, we just need to let go of some of that, and we just need to actually start flowing a bit freer on stage and not taking it so seriously. And when I say that, I don't mean don't take your career or your music seriously. Don't take music so seriously that you drain the fun and the enjoyment out of it. Because what happens when you're on stage is your audience mirrors you. How you are, your audience feels. Have you ever been on stage? Oh, sorry, have you ever seen an artist on stage and they're looking really, really uncomfortable and they can't look at the audience. Well, if you have, you know that you feel uncomfortable for them, right?
I've
And
been to
so,
enough recitals where people don't want to be up there.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so what happens is the audience mirrors us. So how you feel on stage, the audience feels. Have you seen an artist on stage who they might not even be the best singer or the best songwriter or the best musician, but they are so great to be in the room with because they love what they're doing. They're full of life. They're full of energy. And what does it do? It gives us that life. It gives us that energy. It gives us permission to let go. It gives us permission to enjoy ourselves. And so, because we mirror them. And so, if we mirror them, then that suddenly means if we think deeply about it, that means we have a lot more control over our audiences than we believe we do. We actually can have the audience in the palm of our hand because once we know that they will feel how we feel, if we get on stage and we open up and we smile and we connect and we have eye contact and we have open body language, guess what? Your audience are coming to you. They want to be part of it. You don't want to make your audience feel like gate crashers. You want them to feel like guests at your gig. If you pull the blinds down in front of you and you put the barriers up, the audience will feel like gate crashers, like they shouldn't be there. And that's when you get people talking in the audience, not really paying much attention. And what do? Get annoyed. Why are they talking? Why are they talking? Why aren't they looking at me? Why aren't they well, what energy are you giving off? What are you doing to connect? You're not doing what you need to be doing to get their attention, which is connecting with them. We can't expect more from our audience than they're prepared to give us. How can we expect that? We can't, but we do. We do all the time. I want the audience to make me feel safe. I want them to clap when I come on stage. I want them all to look at me. I want them all to really love what I do. I want them to love my music. Doesn't work like that. We have to give a lot more. And slowly our audience will come in and they will come in. And you will see that your following will grow once you start giving. And I'm not talking about just playing, I'm talking about giving, giving from the heart. That's where music comes from, your heart. And if you can reach your audience's heart, honestly, that's where you're going to really engage and interact with them and touch them, you know?
Mm, I love all of that. I love that idea about you don't make them feel like gate crashers. I mean,
Yeah.
I do think sometimes we feel like they owe us something, and
They
it's
don't.
the other way around. We owe
We owe
them.
them.
Like
We're on
they,
stage.
even if it's free, they have given up their time to come watch us.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
valuable.
Yeah. I've got this thing in my book which is called the performer pie. And there's blank ones in the book actually you can fill out. And the performer pie, it's like a pie chart, actually, boring, but the performer pie isn't boring, but it's like a pie chart. So um, really you say, okay, so if the percentage of the whole pie is 100%, so we'll divide it up. How much percentage are you thinking about, am I going to be going wrong? How much percentage are you thinking about, what are you going to do later? How much percentage are you thinking about who's looking at me and self-judgment and self-doubt and all of these things? So all these percentages, right? And so you add them up to 100%. And then I ask, how much of that was you thinking about your audience? And I've had people go, um, nothing. And I'm like, so you expect them to give you over 80% attention and you're not even giving them 5%.
Mm.
And this is what we have to shift. We have to look at how can we give 80%? And then the audience will mirror us and will start giving us 80%. But it's our job. We don't go to a mechanic and expect to fix our own car. The audience doesn't go to a gig and expect to have to hold the performer. That's our job. We're the professional. Even if you're not a professional, but you are, an artist who just loves getting up there and doing music. That's your space. You got up there and that's your job. And your job is to make your audience feel absolutely safe in your arms and give them something they can take home with them, you know?
Hmm, that is so good. That is so good. I definitely want to let you tell people about your book in a sec, but I do want to cover one thing that I think really also contributes to all of this is comparison. It's
Oh,
so
yeah.
hard not to compare yourself to other people. You also don't know what's going on in their mind. They may look totally confident, but freaking out inside. So, how do you talk to artists about overcoming this comparison, which is literally impossible to totally overcome it, right? Because we're always looking at ourselves in comparison to other people, but how can we put that in perspective?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's about getting it into perspective. Comparison to others is a completely wasted energy. Okay, so we only have a certain amount of energy. Now, I went to this therapist once, and he said to me, because I have CFS, which is ME, it's chronic fatigue syndrome. So I have to be very careful about how I pace myself and where I put my energy. So he said to me, look at it like this, Lucy. Imagine you have 10 energy coins for the day, and you have to decide what you do and how you allocate your energy with those 10 coins. And so if you're looking at social media for 3 hours a day and just watching what other people are doing and not believing you can ever be as good as them, that might take four of your coins. Then you have six less, and so on, and so forth. So what are you actually giving your energy to? Energy is finite. It's not just going to be, you're not just going to keep getting more of it for one day. You're going to have a certain amount of energy. So we have to look at it like, what are you spending your coins on? And is the cost worth it? Right? It's like real money. What are you spending your money on? And are you getting a good investment for the coins you are spending? Now, if your energy is going on looking at other people, I was doing a masterclass once for a group of students, and we were talking about comparison to others. And they said to one person said, well, the thing is that I just keep watching this woman on Instagram, and she can now play like three instruments, and it's like I just feel so useless because I can only play one, and it's just, and I just watch her, and I just lose my confidence. And I said, if you spent all the time that you spend watching her actually learning another instrument, you'd be able to play three too. And she was just like, oh yeah. Because actually, sometimes we just need to be reminded that we have everything that we need inside of us. We can do anything that we want if we put our mind to it. You know, um, Not everything, but you get what I mean. So if it's important to you to go out there as an artist and be and give what you have to start putting on the blinkers. You can't be looking everywhere. Now, when I wrote my 10 albums, I or 11 albums, I decided, right, I was going to do an album a year for 11 years. And in fact, it was longer than that because I did EPs in between and singles and everything. And I was lucky because back then there was internet, but it wasn't as much. There was MySpace and everything like that. But it wasn't like it is now, where it's literally taking everyone's attention. So I was lucky. But the thing is, I didn't listen to anyone else's music. I didn't look at anyone else. I just did my thing for like 11 years solid. And I did that because I knew that if I started looking at what other people were doing, I would not be able to achieve what I had set out to do. And that was my priority. Now, the thing is, these days it's really difficult for people because Instagram, TikTok, all of it, YouTube, all of it is there vying for our attention. And it's very hard not to just see other people, even if you're not trying to compare yourself to other people. This is the hard one when it just kind of creeps in because you're seeing so much content that you can't really help it. You can't help it. Um, Now, I what I try and do is, rather than really focusing on talking about content and being distracted by content and comparing yourself to others, I try and encourage people to look at what they need to be doing. Look at what it is that is good for them to be doing. Look at what it is about them that they can add that is unique. The thing is when we see other people, we think we need to be like them. And we think that, well, if they're doing well and they've got 1,000 followers or 10,000 followers, then I need to do what they're doing to be like them. Now, I really encourage people to really be themselves, be authentic, be really tap into who they are because you have a USP, your unique selling point. Now it's used in sales, that term, and your unique selling point is you. We always try and be another person. We try and be someone else because we think that they're better than us. They're doing better than us. They can be better than us. But actually, no one can be a better you than you. And no one can be a better them than they can. And there's already one of them. So why are we trying to be them too? Let's be ourselves. It this thing of wanting to be other people, it's I actually sometimes it makes me feel a little bit sad just how so many people feel like this and not sad in a patronizing way, but just sad because people are led to believe that this is the way. This is the way to be like everyone else. And if you're not, you're a failure, you're a loser, you know, you're not good enough. And I want to tell you the exact opposite. You actually not being like everyone else is the best thing ever because you have something unique that no one else has. You have a way that you sing your songs or you play your music or you do something that is different. Don't you want to be the person who stands out because they're different, not because they're the same? Because when people are the same as someone, you go, oh, they're just like so and so, aren't they? They're very similar to so and so. What if people were saying, wow, look at her or look at him? They're, gosh, that's unique. That I've not seen that before. And just just be try and just accept who you are and what you have and get in your little world because as long as our eyes are opened up to this social media world, I'm not saying, you know, get off social media, but I'm saying again, it's about balance. If your life isn't balanced and you are doing more consuming than creating, then there's an imbalance. Because if you're a creator and you are not creating, then take that time, like I was saying earlier, schedule some time in for your own creative time. Turn that phone off. Turn it off. Whenever I am creating, or I've got a podcast as well when I'm doing my podcast, or I'm creating, or I'm writing music, or I'm writing a book, or whatever I'm doing, my phone is not in front of me. My phone is either switched off or it is behind me somewhere else in the room on silent. And I will not. And my son always says, oh, I mean, he's grown up now, so it's fine. But Mum, I was trying to call you earlier. Where were you? I was just doing, you know, I was recording or I was doing something, and I always call him back. But it's like all my friends as well always say, I can never get hold of you. And it's because I will get hold of you when I have finished doing what I'm doing. Unless it's an emergency, and I'll always check my phone. You know, we can always check. I mean, you know, people are worried about this emergency that's going to happen. I've got to have my phone on because there's going to be an emergency every 5 minutes. There's not.
What did we
And
do
if there,
before cell phones? We survived, right?
we absolutely survived. It was great. It was great. But you know, it's like I'm trying to get with the times, and you know, I'm on my phone as well, like everyone else. But we survived. And what was really good is you didn't have to keep thinking about it.
Mhm.
And so I think the more we become dependent on having the cell phone there or the computer on or whatever, sometimes obviously we need a computer if we're working, whatever, but um it's having some dependence on ourselves and our creativity. You know, switch off and then switch on. Switch yourself on, switch off you
Mm,
know, the phone or whatever.
I love that. Well, I would love for you to tell everybody how they can find your book, what it's called, and what kind of generally what they'll learn in the book. I mean, we've already talked a lot about it right now, but
Yeah. So the book is called, it came out in November 2024. It's published then, and it's called The Art of Live Performance Unlocked. And I call it the definitive industry guide, and it's 7 keys to catapult confidence, master your mindset, and transform your live performances. So you can say goodbye to self-doubt, stage fright, and performance anxiety. Um, in this book, what I tried to do was I tried to, as a performer, I tried to cover a lot of ground because I've been on both sides of the music business for a long time. So, obviously, as I was saying, I've been an artist for over 25 years, 30 years, but I've been, recording for way more than that if you, count when I was a child. Um, so I'm a performer, I'm a music producer and a songwriter, but at the same time, I'm also a coach, as I said earlier, and an educator and also a speaker. Now, I wanted to collate a lot of material that I have been teaching over the years because most of the things that people came to me about were comparison to others, as we've just talked about, perfectionism, self-doubt, self-sabotage, self-judgment, not just performing, because all of these things underlie what goes on in your performances. And that is why I work really holistically with artists and all the work that I do, actually, because we need to work on these things. As I always say, I work with the person behind the performer because that is that the artist is coming from the person who is behind the performer. And so within this book, I'll run through the different the 7 different keys. So we've got the different keys that we've got is the first one's identify your performer pressure points and artist trigger environments. And so with identifying your performer pressure points, they are what are the things that make you feel, sort of nervous? What are the things that give you self-doubt? So all of those things. So I have lists of them and then you can go through them and everything. Then artist trigger environments. What are the environments that trigger you either positively or negatively? Some people, they love being in the rehearsal room. That's a positive trigger. Some people at a large festival, they can't bear it. That's a negative trigger. Some people, they love being playing for an intimate gig. Other people can't bear playing intimate gigs. And what this does is it shows you that because sometimes when people get nervous, they just think, I'm just a crap performer. And you're not a crap performer. What you are is a performer who, in some areas, you need some help or support. We like to sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater and just say, no, I've had a bad gig, so I'm just rubbish. No, we need to identify what are your pressure points and what are your artist trigger environments. And then we can look at, okay, how can we help you in these areas? And then we go through all of that. And so I write about that. The next key is, because there's 7 keys, master your mindset and reprogram your mind for success. Now, this is all about our mindset. That's why it's the second chapter, because I had to put that before everything else, because if your mindset isn't in the right place, you're not going to be in the right place, as I said earlier. And so there's one thing that I talk about in the book, which I'll say now, which is called sushi thoughts. I called it sushi thoughts because if we go to say a sushi restaurant or something like that, I don't know if you've ever been, but if you've been, you may see a conveyor belt going around with all the lovely little dishes on, whether they're vegetarian or not or whatever. All the dishes are going around. And what we do is we look at all of them and we go, oh, what one would I like? I don't want that one, but I like that one because that one. And we reach out and we take the ones that look good. Now, the thing is, we have a conveyor belt in our mind, but it's just got thoughts going round on it. But what do we as humans do? We pick out the most negative ones and we chew on those for hours. We'll think about how someone said this and we'll just think about that. And the positive ones will just keep going round. And we don't necessarily pick those as often as we pick the negative ones. So I always say, choose your thoughts like you choose your sushi. Our thoughts can be chosen. When I found this out, I mean, I know it's kind of self-explanatory, but when this hit me, it was a real revelation to me years ago. I can actually think what I want. I don't have to leave my mind on autopilot all the time. So then we've got celebrate your individuality and stop comparing yourself to others, which is key number 3, which we've just talked about anyway. Um, Key number 4 is break through the barriers between you and your audience. And this is all about how you connect with them. This is about how you relate to them, some of the things that I was speaking about earlier. And, the book has over 100 different topics to delve into. And what's good about it is that you don't just have to read it from cover to cover. You can just look in the index and go, oh, I just need that for tonight. I just need to look at that. Oh, I've got a gig coming up. I feel this. Let me just go into that bit. And then we've got prepare for gig success, not gig failure. Most artists prepare for gig failure. Oh, it's going to go wrong. Oh, what if this happens? Oh, what if that happens? Voice of doom. How do you prepare for gig success? So I lay all that out, how you prepare for gig success. And things like, I'll cover things like, your training grounds. So many artists will say, well, I was in a bar performing and there were only 4 people there and I'll never do that again. I hated it and no one was watching me and no one. And it's like, look, this is great. This is your training ground. And I'll tell you why it's your training ground, because it's better than being in a rehearsal room. You've got a bit of the whole live going on, the live performance. You're in an environment where you're playing live, so you've got that, but also you can see it in a way, although it's not a glorified rehearsal, but you can use it as a glorified rehearsal, because it's like, do you know what? I'm going to try out some of the things that I find difficult, looking at people in the eye or speaking to my audience. So actually, I'm just going to try a few things here. There's a few people here, so I'm going to try those things that you need to try out in public, not just in your rehearsal room. And so then you start turning it around, saying, okay, is this a negative experience then? Of course it's not. This is your training ground. I think bad gigs are the best gigs to train you as a performer. It's not, oh, this is a bad gig. I'm not doing this anymore. Forget this. I can't bear this. This is an awful career. It's like, well, where are you going to learn? Where are you going to learn? So, so prepare for gig success, not gig failure. Then key number 6 is own the stage and perform with pro level confidence. So it's teaching you how to own the stage, how to actually perform. And we've got things, actually, I can't remember if this is in this chapter or in the last chapter, but, I've got everything in there from what you do if you forget something on stage in terms of your lyrics or your music. How do you recover from that? What do you say in between songs? Because sometimes people, they absolutely freeze in between songs and they stand there really awkwardly, or they don't know how to connect with their audience. And I try and teach people that between every song is not a break, it's a transition. And so it's not break time now and everyone have a drink and we all start talking to our band members on stage. It's a transition. How do we get from one transition to the next? So sorry, one part to the next. There's so many things I go into. And then we end up with follow the after show rules. So it sort of comes full circle, which is, see, your gig and all of that and performing isn't finished when you leave the stage. This is actually where you need to think about your critique. When do you critique yourself? When do you critique the band? Do not do it straight after a gig, that's for sure. You've got too much heightened emotion after a gig. And after a gig is the worst time, because especially if things have gone wrong, what happens is you believe they're worse than they are because your adrenaline is running so high. So I always say, leave that. Just leave it for 24 hours. If you've been drinking and you're having an after party, leave it for 48 hours because your head won't be in the right space. Come on, let's just be realistic. This happens. I also actually talk about alcohol, because a lot of people use alcohol for confidence for gigs. And I have a section on that. The thing is, we can ignore these things and say they're not happening, but they are. People drink for confidence, some people. And so I go into, the effects of that. I go into both sides of it, because, I'm not there to judge anyone, but I'm there to pull it apart and look at it for what it is. Okay. So I try and cover, as I said, I cover parenting and the balance between parenting and music. As I said, there's over 100 topics. there's so much to get involved in because I am an artist as well. I know the things and I coach artists. I know the things that we worry about us artists. I know the things that really worry us and cause a lot of anxiety for us. And I've tried to address all of them in the book. Now, of course, I've probably missed out a couple here and there, but overall, I've spent 10 years collating all of the knowledge and well over 30 years the knowledge, but in terms of what I put in the book, even in some sessions I'd write down little notes and then I'd end up adding it to my computer. So for the last 10 years I've just been adding notes.
Mm,
um
that's awesome. Well,
yeah.
can you tell everybody how to find your book online?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can either go to my website, stagereadyartists.com, and you can go there and you can download a copy, or you can you can go to Amazon. So it's available also from Amazon, from Barnes and Noble, Waterstones, and even more. So that's The Art of Live Performance Unlocked.
Love it. Oh, I want to go. I can't believe I didn't read this before we talked, but I have too
I
many
will
books to
send
read.
you,
But I
I'll
want to go
send you a
read it now
copy.
because there's so much helpful information in here. Absolutely. So everybody go check that out. And thank you so much, Lucy. This has been really, really great conversation. I loved everything that we got into today, and I think that you gave them so many nuggets that they can use right now, actionable things that they can use to help make better performances.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, can I just say one more thing? I've got a
Yeah,
podcast as well, the Singing Buddha podcast. It's not all about performance, but it's got a lot of useful creative and spiritual nuggets.
absolutely. Check that out. If you're listening to this, you probably love podcasts. So check that out as well. And thank you so much for
Thanks,
sharing
Bree.
everything with us today.
Thank you so much too. Okay, bye bye.